Welcome to the Illuminators, Changemakers in Senior Living, the podcast that explores the past, present, and future of senior living through the eyes of those who are transforming it from the inside out. I'm your host, Matt Motley, Chief Executive Officer of Illuminus, a faith-based, not-for-profit that aims to transform senior care for the better. Join me as I seek to reimagine the aging experience through an ongoing dialogue, where together we'll shed light on current issues and shine a light on a brighter tomorrow. Hello and welcome back. This week I'm joined by Sherry Cira, who's our Senior Vice President of Administration, and looking forward to having you on, Sherry, and talking about your career with our organization, which has spanned just over 3 decades now. Sherry, I'm interested in just hearing how you began your career in long-term care.
Oh boy, that actually goes back to my years at UW-Eau Claire when I was a student and majoring in social work. And I had a wonderful professor. Her name was Madeline Liefring, and we were preparing for my journey into the graduate studies program at UW-Madison. And I was thinking I was going to go down the path of majoring in my master's program in marriage and family counseling. And Madeline saw something in my skill set that convinced her to inspire me to consider long-term care. And so I started to explore that path and agreed to at least try a practicum. And so I did that in Madison at Meriter Hospital in actually the psych and eating disorders unit. And I really became energized by working with an interdisciplinary team of clinicians, social workers, caregivers, and working on the biopsychosocial wellness for the patients and residents being served. Now that, of course, was a clinic inpatient acute care setting. And so that is where I began my professional career, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I had forgotten we're both, well, I knew we were both blue golds, but we were both in the School of Social Work.
At UW-Eau Claire.
Yeah. How many years were you at UW-Eau Claire?
4. I
4.
graduated
Okay.
in 4 years. Yep.
Okay. And then you got your master's at Madison.
Yep.
And did you do that right away?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yep.
And so then you graduated UW, and then you at that time you went back to Watertown where you grew up, right?
Right. That's correct. Got my first job, professional job, as a social worker at Watertown Hospital as a social worker discharge planner. Very energized with that role. Got to work with the interdisciplinary teams back in my hometown community, and also got to experience working with teams in the emergency room. So that was my first professional job as a social worker, was at Watertown Memorial Hospital.
And did you ever envision going back to work in the community in which you grew up in?
Absolutely not. When I left, when my mother was still alive, she used to always remind me that I told her I would never come back to Watertown and would never work with old people. So I was wrong in both cases, and she reminded me who was really in charge. It wasn't her. It was our big guy upstairs.
Yeah.
So.
And so how many years were you at the hospital?
I was there for 4 years.
Okay.
And it was during my 4 years of being at the hospital that I began to realize how much I started to fall in love with the senior population.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the discharge planning that I would be involved in had to do with seniors who were needing to not go home right away, but rather to get rehabilitation or maybe find another long-term option.
Yeah, and you were interacting on a daily basis with Marquardt.
Yep.
So I want to hear about how you came to Illuminus.
How I came to Illuminus.
Fun story.
Well,
I want to hear the whole story.
Oh, story. Okay. Well, so back then, it was very typical for an individual, let's say, for example, if they were having a hip replacement, planned or unplanned, he or she would be in the hospital for 5 to 7 days, which is very different than our 2 to 3 day hospitalization of today. And the nursing home would get all of their paperwork probably 2 days prior to the admission. And there were no computers back
Right.
then. So you gathered the paperwork, put them in an envelope, got in your car, drove over to the nursing home, and hand delivered the paperwork to the DON, the nursing home administrator at the time. And he, I was in and out of Marquardt often, got to know very personally the team there. And as I started to think about how I could maybe make a difference on the team, I decided to make an appointment with the executive director at the time, Mr. Boyd Flater. It's kind of forward of me as I look back and think about it now. And so had the opportunity to meet with him and handed him my resume and just asked if ever there was an opportunity for open social work position, I would really welcome the opportunity to talk about how I might be able to add value to the team.
Hmm. And why were you thinking about that at the time? You were employed as a discharge planner at the hospital, and you're thinking about this career move.
Yeah, because I wanted to have a more lasting relationship and make a difference in the lives of the seniors, much beyond just making a discharge plan and then moving on to the next patient.
Yeah.
I wanted to be part of that long-term transition and support. I felt pulled. I just felt
Mhm.
pulled to satisfy that mission.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
What you were looking for? Those you talk about the deeper relationships,
Yeah.
but just share with us more about your thoughts on this.
Sure. I wanted to have an impact really just beyond putting a plan together and out the door. I wanted to make more of a difference in the lives of both the resident and their family because that transition is life changing.
Mhm.
And it's all about not only moving to a different four walls, but also planning for a whole different daily routine
Right.
and what's going to happen as one continues to have changes in how they function daily.
Mhm.
There's family or a spouse back in the community. Boy, that's huge. That's a huge difference. I mean, if I'm used to living with my husband and my daily routine and my dogs, and now one day that changes,
Right.
that's a major change. I just yearn to be able to be a part of helping people through all of those transitions, not just make discharge plans and then go home.
Mhm.
And that's really what pulled me. Another thing, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before, but I was born, baptized, grew up and raised in the Watertown Moravian
Right.
Church. And so it was always a part of my life and my family's life to support the mission of Marquardt.
Yeah.
And it was always there for me when I needed it, the Moravian Church,
Mhm.
that is. And I just felt a natural, organic pull toward the continued mission of the
Yeah.
Moravian Church. I felt that it was almost like it was my calling,
Mhm.
if
And
that makes
when you
sense.
started in the organization, did you think you'd have a career that spanned as long as it has?
I hope. I
Okay.
really did. I
Yeah.
hope. There were times, and we might, talk about some of the different roles that I've had the privilege of assuming and carrying out. But I also saw that very clearly that, man, there's so much going on here at Illuminus
Yeah.
that there are so many opportunities. It didn't feel like a discharge planner and there's nothing else that I could possibly grow into in this
Right.
organization.
Yeah. So I want to go back and just talk a little bit about, I want to hear from you kind of the importance of social workers in healthcare,
Mm.
because it's an often overlooked profession. When people think about healthcare, they think about being a nurse maybe a CNA, a doctor. They do not think about being a social worker and administrator like I am. But share with us your views on the importance of that social work component.
Yeah, truly, we think of healthcare, and indeed, we think of nurses, nurse aides, med techs, doctors, physician assistants. And yes, without them, we'd be in trouble. So, in addition to all of that, though, there's the whole psychosocial, financial, the pillars of health that impact one's health also.
Yeah.
There's the disease process, and then there's the social determinants of health. And if you don't include all of it, you lose. You really lose. And so when we're serving people in a healthcare setting, and we're only looking at the disease process, and we're not considering, do we have a path to get food? Do we have a path to get medications? Do we have transportation? Do we have housing? All of those things, this doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I've always had a very strong belief that the importance of that social work impact to the overall wellness of serving an individual in healthcare
Mhm.
is priceless.
And how do you think the roles evolved over time?
I know that by education, I certainly wasn't there in person, but when the poorhouses originated, et cetera, that really started with social work.
Right.
I think social work was really inherently the force
Mhm.
behind caring for people in need.
Yeah.
It began a lot with the poor and
Yeah.
the needy.
So I want to go back. So you set up a meeting with the CEO of Illuminus and waltzed into his office and you slammed your resume down on his desk. What
Oh,
happened?
is that your takeaway
Well,
from?
maybe. You can set the record straight.
Okay. So I remember Boyd looking at me and asking me, if you did work in this organization, where would you see yourself 5, 10, 15, 20 years if you were here? I looked at him and I said, sitting in your chair.
And what was his response?
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm glad that didn't come to fruition. And so that started your tenure then at Illuminus.
Yes. So it was probably about a month after that. I was in my office at the hospital and the phone rang and I answered it, and it was him on the other end asking if he could schedule an appointment to talk with me about possibly joining him.
And your first role with Illuminus was a social worker in the nursing home.
Correct.
And how long were you in that role?
About 7.5 years.
Okay. And then from there, you've had a number of roles within our organization.
Yeah.
I oftentimes share with you and others that you're our greatest utility player.
Yeah.
And so just kind of walk us through the different roles you've had at Illuminus.
Okay. So as I said, started as the Director of Social Services at the Marquardt Health Center, the nursing home. And after about 7 years, and keep in mind, Mr. Flater retired, and then the next nursing home administrator, CEO, joined us. His name was Kieran Clark, who you know well. And it was around 6.5 years of my tenure as the Director of Social Services, I started to feel in the need and to feel inspired to just let Kieran know, hey, if there's ever any other opportunity in the organization that you feel my skill set would fit, I'm eager to continue to grow in the organization. And a couple of months later, what was happening in the organization's growth strategy was they were adding another senior independent living apartment. Back at that time, they were calling it my Lapnow Apartments. It was a 52 unit entrance fee,
Yep.
independent living. And it was coming out of the ground, quite literally. Kathy Reedy was the housing administrator at the time, overseeing an already existing 50 unit apartment, senior living, affordable housing, as well as garden homes. And unbeknownst to me, they had been talking about adding an assistant housing administrator to help not only fill that apartment, but also start to do some kind of case management work, because there were a lot of people in the apartments who were aging in place and perhaps needed some counsel in terms of were there maybe home health services that would allow them to be more successful remaining in their apartment.
Mhm.
And so I was offered the opportunity to become the assistant housing administrator and learn some of the roles and responsibilities of that. Now, that was wonderful. I learned so much.
And how many years were you in that role?
Once again, there's series of 7 that happens here. And not that it was an intended series of 7, but looking backwards, it was kind of a cadence of around 7 years.
Okay.
So that was indeed the case. Now, the most important lesson that I learned was always try keys before you hand them out to the new resident. That's not something I learned in social work school at UW-Eau Claire or UW-Madison. So sometimes my housing experience taught me so many grassroots things that really make a difference and matter to the customer
Yeah.
that we're serving when they're moving in. So I learned a lot of life's lessons in that role.
And in that role, you worked directly under your aunt.
That is correct. Kathy Reedy,
Yeah.
yes, is my aunt. Yes.
And so I want to talk about that in a little bit, the
Okay.
family connection, because I don't know that anybody has the family connections you have and ties to Illuminus. But let's talk about your next phase and
Okay.
um,
Eventually it became the case that I was asked to consider serving as the administrator there.
yeah,
And it was a steep learning curve, but all the resources were there. That's another quality of Illuminus. All of the leaders that I've had the privilege of working with and my colleagues, there's no one left behind ever,
yeah,
no matter what the
yeah.
challenge or the uncharted road that we're faced with. Everybody helps each other.
Yeah, it's a pretty special culture
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And so how many years were you the the assisted living administrator?
About 7.
And then you got your DOA title?
Prior to you becoming our nursing home administrator, CEO, I only had one title with each role that
Yeah.
I had in the organization. But you brought along the gift of at least 3 titles every year.
Every year, yeah. Right. Well, I don't want you to get complacent.
Yeah, complacency kills.
So let's talk for a little bit about the family connection. Family members who worked at the organization and who lived with us over the years. I know you've been heavily involved with all of their kind of journeys. Just want to hear your thoughts, both from the perspective of a medical social worker helping your family members, as well as being a daughter to your parents or a sister to your brother. If you could share some of your
Yeah.
thoughts from that perspective.
Oh, I really appreciate that question, because that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
know
it's
that well
living it
too.
every day.
You live it yourself as
Yeah.
well. And it is a very things through 2 sets of lenses. Absolutely. The one thing that always strikes me is that I never feel as a family member. I never feel that my loved ones' needs were ever unmet.
Yeah.
And I never felt that I was given special
Mhm.
attention or special care. You can just tell it's genuine.
Mhm.
And I also appreciate that I'm I've never felt ashamed to be vulnerable. Oh,
Mhm.
I'm a family member. I'm not Sherry
Right.
Cira
Yeah.
with whatever title Matt has given me
Yeah.
today. I think that's pretty special.
I know we've talked a lot about just for you growing up, your dad owned a business in Watertown
Mm-hmm.
and the impact that had on you from a work ethic perspective. T- Can you just shed some light on that and the importance that's played in your career?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. My parents, and I grew up in the generation and a time and with parents who's had an incredibly strong work ethic. And that's how we were raised. Two sisters and a brother. I'm the youngest of the four of us. And there was no playing until the work was done.
Mm-hmm.
And there was always more work to be done
Yeah.
before the play.
Oh, yeah.
And and there was always, I don't care how high up in any organization you get, if you ever think you're too good to get down there and scrub toilets with the housekeepers, then you're not worth salt.
Mm-hmm.
You can probably relate growing up. Sometimes you resent that, right? But boy, that quickly became a gold standard for my behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has helped me to be brave enough to seek the challenges I have sought to grow in the Illuminus community and to also accept the challenges that I've been asked to consider as I've grown in the Illuminus community. That work ethic is priceless.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely is. Yeah.
So let's keep going. I want to keep talking about your time in the organization. So you were seven years in the nursing home, 7 years in independent living, 7 years in assisted living. Tell us about the next role in
Yeah.
your journey with us.
Okay. So I'm the administrator at our assisted living, and Kieran Clark, the executive director at the time, was preparing for his retirement. And so our board of directors was beginning their search for a new executive director. And that search ended, fortunately, in you, Matt, becoming our new executive director. And so you joined us in that role. And of course, you and I knew each other. We had a history
Yeah.
because you had done your practicum
Yeah.
at the Mark Wharton. And so that began a bit of a shift in the organization as you began to discover all of the elements of workings operationally, financially, about the current state of the organization. You also began to put together some of the realities, where we needed to go, et cetera. And through that first several years, I began to experience the opportunity to participate in some of your more kind of strategic team
Mm-hmm.
projects,
Yeah.
which eventually, through 2 or 3 years, started to reveal your desire to have me working more on the organization than in the organization. And so there became a more at that level too. And so that first pull was that director of organizational advancement and starting to work on the organization instead of in it.
So Director of Organizational
Advancement.
Advancement.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's pretty sophisticated. Tell us about that role, what you were doing in that role.
So in that role, now keep in mind, at that time, we were still a single site,
Yeah, that's right.
the campus in Watertown. And it had been the case that all of the divisions, the nursing home, the assisted living, the home health, the independent housing, all operated as silos. And you brought in a philosophy of opposite. And so in that role, you had asked me to start to take down all of those silos. Like, for instance, each one of those divisions had their own unique set of policies and
Right.
procedures,
Yeah.
their own set of employee handbooks. And so we started to take all of that apart and put back together standard operations and procedures and processes and policies that covered everybody.
Right. We
I
were
mean,
at the time laying the foundation for
Mhm.
the future and
Correct.
managing organizations. And
Correct.
yeah,
I didn't know it at the time. Of
Yeah.
course, you had that stronger vision, but that indeed is where we started to become that foundational
Right.
organization that could be replicated time after time after time.
yeah.
Mhm.
So just talk a little bit about kind of that growth, because you've probably experienced it more than anybody else, and because we've been together the longest of kind of the core leadership team, and we had no blueprint when we grew the organization. We didn't exactly know what we were growing, but it was a lot of just industry knowledge and trial and error and a willingness to be humble and recognize when we needed to make a course correction. And you kind of lived through all of that. And so I think it'd be fun to just kind of talk about how this came to be.
Oh man. Well, my memory is, of course, first of Lutheran homes in Fond du Lac, kind of in the swim lane next to that, Racine,
Yeah.
Lincoln Lutheran of Racine,
hmm
where you were having conversations, of course, with colleagues at your level.
Right.
Tho- Those two organizations were facing, dire circumstances, and the word had gotten out of some significant operational and financial improvements and course corrections that were made under your leadership, and our teams
Yeah.
work together. And so we started to help. As you said, how we were going to help, we weren't quite sure. And so it was very grassroots and a bit organic. From my perspective, as I wasn't involved, nor should I have been in those higher level conversations. And so I recall very clearly knowing that I needed to contribute the way you needed me to contribute.
hmm
And so it was always a time of, from my perspective, very focused attention to what was going on and what could I add that would be meaningful. So it was also, for me, this growth trajectory has been and continues to be a continued learning curve,
Yeah.
because
It has been for all of us.
every community is so different.
they
Every
are.
culture is so different.
Yeah.
Every personality is so different.
So kind of looking back on everything that we've accomplished over the last close to 15 years, what do you think? How does it make you feel? Are you surprised we were able to achieve what we have?
I I am humbled at what we've been able to achieve, even more humbled when I think about what we're hoping to continue to achieve. I'm so grateful that we've been able to achieve what we have. Where would all those residents be?
Right. We talk about that a lot. These are organizations that are struggling. And if those organizations didn't exist, what would happen?
Mm,
And what would happen to the communities?
exactly.
Yeah.
You and I experience it all the time. And imagine even if half of what we operate didn't exist, how
Yeah.
much worse it would be.
Yeah.
So,
I want to go back, talk a little bit about my time doing my practicum and then becoming the CEO, because it's probably somewhat unique. Doesn't happen all that often, but our organization's built a culture around really growing people internally. We've been more aggressive in doing that. In part, it started with me. I did my residency for a year. We spent a lot of time together, and I learned under you how assisted living works and the regulatory environment, and to a large degree, kind of just social work and the role of a social worker in different care settings. Just interested in your thoughts when the announcement was made that Matt Mothy, who was the student doing his residency at the organization, is coming back 5.5 years later as CEO. So somewhat of a role reversal for you and I. What were your thoughts?
when I learned that you were going to be our next CEO, there were a couple things that stood out as very critically important to the organization about you, not about you in terms of your personality or what I liked about you or didn't like about you. The things that I felt important were, number one, you were a young professional who was innovative. And from my experience in working together with you when you were doing your residency, I knew that you also understood that the organization had grown complacent, and that wasn't unique to Marquardt. I'm talking about the whole long-term care industry had grown complacent. And that if long-term care and post-acute care, senior living in general, didn't start to look at itself and change to anticipate the changes that were coming with healthcare in general, Medicare, Medicaid, insurances. You already knew back then workforce challenges were coming. It was the understanding of your mindset that I was very excited to know that leadership was going to be at the helm of our organization. Because at that time, we were starting to fall behind because of those reasons. And of course, the Great Recession,
Right.
which is a variable outside of our locus of control to a great extent. And you being, that younger professional also brought a bit of a horizon of promise of it's going to be here a while.
So talk a little bit about how we train and educate and promote and
Yeah.
encourage young people in our organization.
This is kind of first a higher level look, but one of the things that you challenged me with early on in our career together was the Malcolm Baldrige performance excellence model and mindset.
Yeah.
And that integrated operational system that really makes an organization dynamic and performing at an exceptionally high level. And one of the tenets of that model includes really good succession planning. It includes being very thoughtful and strategic about do not let the organization's intelligence walk out the door when certain people retire or go to another position outside of the organization for a growth opportunity, et cetera. If you know in the organization that someone is going to be transitioning, what is that role? what is the loss going to be if you aren't thoughtful about preparing a succession plan to prepare the organization for a seamless transition and no loss of momentum when that person leaves. With that philosophy in mind, we truly make that happen. We have done so with activities. We've done that with some nursing transitions, director of nursing transitions. We know if we have internal talent and growth, we want to promote from within as much as we can. And now we know somebody's going to retire. We like to identify from within who could rise to that position. Today, I'm anticipating a retirement transition, and we've identified a person to go into my role. We've identified a person to go into her role. And so in real time, we're starting to work on training and developing, and me backing out of some things, moving into some things, so that nothing is even felt by anyone in the organization when my final departure occurs.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time for us because we've continued to grow the organization from the number of people we serve, but we've also been able to attract a lot of great young people, which in today's environment is not easy to do. What do you think are some of the keys to our success in being able to do that?
First of all, we don't just talk, we walk the walk. People see that, they notice that. They're calling people in our organization saying, gosh, if there's ever anything in your organization for me, let me know. I'm seeing what you guys are doing. I want to be a part of it. I think that's just being and acting who we are, our culture. I think that's a big, important part of it. The innovation. We're not afraid. We're not afraid to be innovative, to try different things.
So we've been talking about growing people from within our organization and training young professionals. We created the Education Institute 3 or 4 years ago, and you lead that, and you've really helped us to grow that. Just talk a little bit about the importance of that, not only within our organization, but what we have the possibility to do on a bigger level when it comes to impacting how healthcare is provided.
So as we know, we are in a people business. It's plain, it's simple. We're caring for people, and we need people to care for people. The people caring for our people deserve to be trained, to be supported, to be understood, to be upskilled in order to continue to do that well. The Institute exists, and I must say, Illuminus is making a big investment. Medicare and Medicaid don't pay us dollars for training and educating. This is part of our mission, our not-for-profit faith-based mission. And I think it's priceless, amazing, and it's going to make all the difference in the world to continue to pay attention to the people that we depend upon to care for our residents. Through our institute, we do things like new hire orientation, which isn't just a 3-hour deal. It's a whole week and beyond. We have our own nurse aid training program. We have our own CBRF training program. We are also very heavily clinically focused on training, and now we're starting to become heavily focused on non-clinical too. We started an Ignite Mentor program so that when new staff start, they have that partner who can help them be more successful going forward. Now we're also starting a leadership training series for those who supervise other people. I don't know about you, but most people, whether it's nursing school, social work school, administrator school, you aren't necessarily always taught how do you have difficult conversations with people,
Right.
right? How do you manage your performance? So,
Or even learning new technologies.
absolutely.
New technologies are being created so rapidly.
Hmm.
And for a lot of us, we went to school many, many years ago. And so you're needing to constantly learn new things, be a lifelong learner.
And it could be the case down the road. Right now, the Illuminus Institute serves our Illuminus staff in all of our Illuminus communities. And maybe imagine there could be a day where we also serve our non-communities too,
Yeah.
if there becomes an unmet need.
Yeah.
But again, goes along with our mission. If there are no longer training programs out there, we may need to become the answer for other communities
Right.
as well.
One of the things I'm most excited about is just, I mean, we've worked so hard on the career ladders and how an individual can progress from a CNA to a med tech to an
Yeah.
LPN to an RN manager. And to now be able to see some of our younger staff starting to make that progression and have a bigger and bigger impact on healthcare. When we look back on this 20 years from now, I think that's going to be some of the biggest impact that we see. Because we're both aware of a number of people we used to work with who today are nurse practitioners, they're
Yep.
physician assistants, they run clinics, they are administrators of hospital or hospital programs, and it's a pretty awesome impact that we're starting to really foster and grow within our organization.
Mm.
But we also know that it's harder and harder to find individuals who want to work in long-term care. And so as an organization, we made the determination a few years ago that we were going to partner with an organization to bring nurses from the Philippines into our communities. And you've been very heavily involved with that and leading that for our organization. Just talk a little bit about that process and what it means to us to have these individuals working side by side with our staff and in our different care settings.
Indeed, through your relationship with the CEO of our Watertown Community Hospital, you had learned of this company in Nashville, Tennessee called Infinity Care Partners, and they do a wonderful job of working with organizations in the United States, healthcare organizations, be they hospitals, be they nursing homes, who are dealing with workforce issues for nurses in particular for this company. In the Philippines, nurses who are eager to come to the United States and have a very meaningful living working as a nurse in the United States. Some of them stay for the rest of their lives, some of them maybe not. And so we started an engagement with them back in about 2021 and decided to go ahead and hire some nurses for 2 of our nursing homes in 2 different communities, Illuminus communities. Now, back then, it appeared that they were going to arrive in about 2 years after date of hire, going through all of the immigration process. All of that takes a while. The immigration process got slowed down because of geopolitical influence outside of our control. Last July 2024, we did have arrive our first hired nurse, Mr. Lee Belmont, who has been since working as a nurse at our Marquardt Health Center. The Philippines have an innate reverence for seniors and the elderly in their culture. I know this anecdotally from what they tell me, from what those he works with at Markwort tell me, from what others who have had Philippine nurses work for them tell me, and even from what they have told me in our interviews. All the interviews, of course, are virtual over Zoom calls, but something has shifted with the immigration process. And I'm delighted to say all of a sudden we are seeing embassy interviews being scheduled.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting.
It is exciting. And our hope is to eventually have 14 Philippine nurses joining us.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Once again, our current workforce in the United States is such that we're never going to be able to fill all of our positions. And so I celebrate that Illuminus is thinking creatively and innovatively and realizing an international resource as its combined solution to the workforce challenges.
Yeah, on a macro level in the United States, we're aging as a society, and the number of healthcare professionals continues to age as well. And so it becomes more and more important to be as creative as we can. And this is one of a numerous ideas that we've had to be creative, along with the Education Institute and how we mentor young professionals. So Sherry, when you think about kind of all that Illuminus has accomplished over the years, what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of the fact that we've never swayed from our mission. Ever, no matter what. That has always been our litmus test to everything we have ever done. Even when we've had to make really hard decisions and course corrections, that has always been our lightning rod.
Yeah.
I know if that had ever changed, or if I had ever felt that was no longer our pinnacle, I wouldn't have been able to, myself, continued my journey.
Yeah.
But that is what I'm most proud of.
Do you have any regrets over now that you're in the latter half of your career, and any regrets in becoming a social worker and having spent all of your career in long-term care?
Nothing comes top of mind. I have no recall of ever regretting my career at Illuminus in any capacity at all. If ever any regrets, it's probably been because of me being hard on myself. And maybe on those days we learn our lessons, right? That, oh, I could have done that better, or oh, I could have done that differently.
Yeah, but that just makes you better.
Yeah.
Makes us better at what we do. If you could go back and give the younger version of yourself any advice starting out a career in social work, what would it be? At a time when it feels like people are running away, young people are running away from this profession. And I've been doing this 21 years as an administrator, and I've loved every day of it. It's never felt like a job to me. I feel like a 6-year-old in a wonderful playground oftentimes because of the interactions that we get to have with people and the work that you do. You can see the impact it has on the people that we serve. You can see it in their face, the good, the bad, the ugly. And you can definitely sense when somebody's hurting, when somebody's in pain, when somebody is joyful or happy or has been able to successfully transition back home. That makes it all worth it. When you think about healthcare 20 years from now, what do you want to see radically changed?
And I'm not saying this to be cliche, but I want to see radical changes with the whole regulatory system, not just for long-term care, but for acute care, for the whole healthcare system. I would I would want to see radical change. I would want to see radical change around how our delivering healthcare is reimbursed, how the cost structure of it.
Yeah. Yeah, as healthcare professionals, we talk a lot about the regulatory burdens, but it's getting to a point where we're going to have to be more vocal and to do more advocacy around that, because it's hamstringing our ability to provide services to people.
It's beyond cynical from
Yeah.
my perspective. It's beyond cynical. I remember in the early 90s being through surveys year after year after year, and they were nothing compared to what they are now. They were about ensuring the residents were cared for and giving recommendations and guidance.
Right.
Today, it's so different.
Right.
We're coming in and we know we have to give you so many,
It's punitive
it's punitive.
versus collaborative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have to give you, we have to find enough to issue this year so many dollars in civil monetary penalties.
Right.
And we're going to spread that out between so many nursing homes. So it's a game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to
And
stop. It's driving people out of healthcare.
it's driving people out of healthcare. And the saddest part is when I look at all of the time that consumes for our staff when they're in the building over non-important stuff that's taking them away from really touching our residents, caring for our residents, and they're the ones who are paying the price.
Yeah.
That makes me very angry.
I agree. The burden of paperwork and checking the boxes versus the hands-on care.
Yep.
It's frustrating.
That's my biggest hope and wish. I know that they're putting together some appointed committees through Congress,
Yes, I
and I
saw
was
that.
hoping that you would somehow get on that committee.
No. I'm hoping that I can get some of the regulators here at some point and we have a conversation about
Good.
the regulatory environment and what went wrong.
Well,
So,
please.
Sherry, thank you for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure and honor to talk to you about your journey through healthcare and all that we've accomplished at Illuminus and kind of your thoughts on the future. And it's inspiring. Your story is inspiring, given all the different roles that you've had within our organization and the impact that you've had on healthcare in general over the course of your career. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who watched this today.